The selection mechanisms that determine what happens to you in relationship to the next generation, say, are selecting you on the basis of your action and your behavior. I would say they're selecting you on the basis of your values. If you're an idiot, say, and you go charging after a lion and the lion eats you, then the nature of reality, so to speak, has rendered a judgment on the value structure that sent you down that particular path, right? And so you're being selected by natural forces as a consequence of your behavior. Now, and then we can extend that argument, especially in the human case, or in the case of any organism that's also subject to sexual selection. And human beings are tremendously subject to sexual selection. One of the things we know about human beings is that females are very sexually selective. Female humans, as opposed to, say, to female chimps, which aren't. So part of what's occurred to select human beings for the way they are is the choices that each gender has made with regards to action and belief, but in many ways more specifically female choices. So it's kind of interesting. The next time you're irritated at your boyfriend, let's say, then you can just remember that untold millions of women have chosen men so that they're exactly like he is. You can't really blame him for that. Here's the thing that's tricky from a scientific perspective. Your behavior and your value structures. If your value structures determine what you're interested in, how you behave, and selection pressure occurs as a consequence of your actions, then doesn't it mean that the structure of the value systems that drive your behavior have to be regarded as true or real in some scientific sense? I don't understand in what way that can't be regarded as real. Because people think of things like value structures as epiphenomenal. They're not real like material is real. But I don't get that. You're interacting with each other all the time, and you're doing that on the basis of your capacity for action and the value systems that drive that. And obviously, those have some effect on whether or not you're selected by women, say, or by men for that matter, but also by the natural world. Everybody knows that you come into the world with an a priori structure. It's like that a priori structure was selected. So in what way is it not true? I could say, well, it's as true as it gets. Well, it's not true like a materialist idea, but that's okay. We pursue materialist truths for reasons that are non-materialist, and those reasons are just as real as the materialist truths, but they're a different kind of truth. The way your brain computes your dominance affects how much positive emotion you have and how much negative emotion, and if you're way the hell down in the dominance hierarchy, or you feel that way, then you're going to experience way more negative emotion because your nervous system has calculated that the environment on average is very dangerous to you because you're barely clinging to the edge of reality. And you're going to experience very little positive emotion because, well, things don't look that good for you. Those aren't really systems you can control. They're like master operating systems that sit at the base of your brain, you know? And so you say, well, do things change across time? It's like, yes, but they change within constraints that don't change much across time. So for example, it's reasonable to assume that there's as much conservation of value as there is retention of skeletal structure. You know, and I went at least that much. I think there's actually more, but certainly there's at least that much. I went to the Smithsonian at one point, and they have a display of mammalian skeletons in there that's extremely extensive. So it's everything from little bats to whales. It's really interesting to walk through that because what you see is that everything's basically a bat. The bats look exactly like us, skeletally, except their fingers are way longer. All that's happened is that there are transformations of size in the basic skeletal structure. The structure itself is virtually identical across mammals. And evolution is a conservative process, right? It just doesn't go zipping off in some completely random direction. And so I would say also, the way to think about it is that there are levels of stability in the evolutionary process. And some domains are extremely stable across time. And one of them happens to be the existence of a dominance hierarchy. It's at least 400 million years old. And that's old. It's older than trees. So if you're trying to think about what's actually real, you can't see a dominance hierarchy and you can't taste it or touch it or sense it in any real way. But dominance hierarchies are more real than almost anything that you ever come across. They're probably not quite as real as rocks, but they're real enough so that both you and lobsters organize yourself into them and understand them. it's change within constraints. And I think maybe one of the ways to understand that is it's something like the variation in languages. Are languages the same or different? Well, it depends on your level of analysis. There are levels of analysis at which the commonalities are what's most manifest, and there are levels of analysis where the differences are most manifest. But I like to think about it as a hierarchy, and there's fundamental elements at the base of the hierarchy, and they don't change. Life made a bet 400 million years ago, and it was one of those bets that's just not going to change. The dominance, it's such a stable element of the environment that its existence and its nature is one of the fundamental presumptions of our being. It's extremely important. So, for example, one of the things that women do with men, and men do it with women as well, but they use different criteria, is men are very competitive in a certain manner. And the women assume that the guys who win are the better men, and they just peel them from the top. And so the dominance hierarchy, in part, female selection is one of the things that determines whether male genes of a particular type go into the future. But so is the structure of the dominance hierarchy. Because if you're at the bottom of it, I mean, good luck finding a partner. It's very, very unlikely unless it's random and impulsive. So, or involuntary.